Great. So we are recording now, aren't we? So welcome everyone on this wonderful afternoon and lunchtime. So I'm Abena Bubbers-Jones, the founder of Medic Footprints, and today for the Top Healthcare Influencers webinar, we have the Miss Stephanie Cuckoo here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So I'm really excited to have Stephanie on with us. When did I first meet you? So a few years ago, and we thought we'd been working together at UCLH in London at some point, or I thought I'd seen you on a picture wall or something.
I feel like I met you at a conference just before I left the NHS, or just after I'd left.
Interesting. So we've been in touch a lot since then, and you've really developed your portfolio in a terribly interesting way that actually is really appealing to a lot of doctors who, I know you've been telling me that you've been approached, but even I get asked pretty much about 10, 20 times a week by various doctors saying, I want to get into digital health. How do I get into digital health? What do I do? And so for people joining, this is the person to speak to. I'm not saying everyone go and speak to her, but this is the opportunity that we have to hear about how Stephanie went from a consultant in, CCT in O&G to what she's doing now, which is an amazing portfolio career as a health tech advisor, an investor, and a consultant for the WHO. So where do we start? Stephanie, why did you get into medicine in the first place?
I got into medicine because I was only good at science. My grandfather was a doctor. His sister was, the first female gynecologist in West Africa. I have a family of doctors on one side, but I think really that I was good at science, and I thought the medicine was a safe career. Actually, in retrospect, I was speaking about this to someone today. Whilst most people thought my departure from medicine was very surprising, when I look at things now, and I try and think back to how we improve the way we make decisions about career choices at 18 or 17 when we make them. And I don't have the answer, but if I look back then, there were so many conflicts. I had a creative part that I was scared to tap into. I was good at science, but yet science is much more than medicine or engineering. And, at the time, the world is different now than it was when I was making a decision to go to medical school. And this is the other thing that careers don't allow for. As the world changes, the technological age came, careers change.
Did it meet your expectations?
It did. I would say I loved medicine. I was in the NHS for 15 years. And I think I was like some medics. I knew what I wanted to do quite early on. And that helps when you're passionate about something in medicine quite early on. So within the third year, I knew I wanted to do cancer research. By the fourth year, I did women's health. I absolutely knew I was going to be a women's cancer surgeon and look after women with cancer. And that is what I ended up doing. You mentioned that I was CCT. The honest truth is that I actually never got my CCT. I left.
Oh, did you not in the end?
I left.
Oh, I thought you literally CCT'd and was like, bye.
It was completely bonkers because I'd made the decision to leave about 2 years before my CCT was due. And I kind of felt like I was hanging in there. And then I started being approached to talk about consultant jobs. And then I had three months. By the time I got to 3 months to the end, I cracked and handed in my resignation letter. But I think that was more to do with burnout than the decision I'd already made prior, about 6 months prior, which I was too scared to act on, which was that, you know what, I think there are other things I could do with my life that will fit in more with the life I want to live. And I always use this expression, I loved medicine. And it was such a shock to so many people because I was truly passionate about gynecological cancers. I did fellowships abroad. I worked in France. I worked in Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York as a medical student. I did research at UCL. I loved what I did, and I did it incredibly well. I ended up at the Bart's Marsden Fellowship. But one day I started, I didn't fall out of love with it, but I started to feel like my life wasn't going in that direction, my personal life. And so I just chose life. I chose me. I chose my life over my career. It wasn't that I didn't love what I did. I just chose my life over my work. And I think, that's becoming more and more important for doctors now. And I see the younger doctors, and things are harder now than it was for us.
Things seem so much harder now, and I think
Getting harder.
making that decision early on. I mean, your story echoes mine, or in the sense that I chose life, and I could look into the future. We're talking about, what's going to happen in the future. And I could see that, having a surgical career as it was, and the expectations on me was not going to support the lifestyle that I wanted to live, which involved more sleep, more weekends, no nights.
But you don't know that when you're making the decision. You don't really think about the life.
But,
you just think, I want to be a surgeon. I'm interested in cancer.
Yeah,
and then reality hits when you're in it. You're like, oh my God, I don't have life. Oh my God, it's so hard to look after cancer patients every day. It's so emotionally, psychologically hard, There was so much. But the 15 years I was in it, I had a great time until I burnt out, until I got to, work in places where I was so unsupported. And I thought, you know what? No, you don't control my life. I'm in control of my life. But it took time to think about leaving, and I had to think about who I was, because who I was when I was 17, when I made the decision to go to medical school, and at 28 and at 37 when I left, they're very different people, and I would encourage everyone to use the professional support unit at the deanery. And I had this coach there who really just tried to get me to understand who I was, how the healthcare system works. And I did these personality tests at the end, and it said, you're creative, you like innovative, you like to find new ways to solve things, you like, and it was everything the NHS wasn't. And it was like, I'm trapped, I feel suffocated. And so it wasn't a hard decision to leave in the end, because I knew that I would transfer my skills. I knew that I wanted to be in the future of health. If I couldn't be in the present in hospitals helping people, that I wanted to be in the future of health. And that's how I started to find my way to where I am now.
I think that's fantastic. And I was going to say, yes, for people who are here today, if you've got any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. We will be doing questions if we have time, because there's so much really rich content we have and not that much time. Stephanie, tell us about, thank you so much for sharing that you've been through burnout. I think I've been through burnout as well. I'm sure a lot of doctors have. How do you transition from burnout, leaving the NHS and leaving what is your career and identity, to where you are now? But more, tell me about that transition period. So I remember actually seeing you, I think, at some point, and then you were kind of looking at exploring different things, and it's been a really exciting time. But
April 2018, I actually left, and I started thinking about leaving in 2017. I guess there were two things. One, it was, what am I interested in? What am I going to do? What is the future of health? What is out there? And so I had to find my interest. And so before I left, 2 years before I left, I started to looking at, if there's so many things that are frustrating about medicine, what is the future of health? It's a question I ask myself every day, even today. What is the future of health within a specific context? What really is the future of solving that problem within health? And so I started to go to conferences. And here I will say, make no mistake of how grateful I am for my privilege, how much I know that not everyone can get up and walk out and change their lives. When I was leaving, some of the saddest moments were where nurses who had, used their income to do extra courses to try and, just progress in their careers, and yet the NHS roles were just not helping them get anywhere. And they just looked at me and they were like, it's not fair, you don't understand. I would love to transition, I would love to go out into the world, but I don't have any options, I don't. And that thinking of not having options is really not very good for medics, because we have to think out of the box. We have to find our interests. Yes, there is medicine that's helping, but once you've been in a hospital setting and you've looked after patients and you've run logistics and you're part of a team and you've done pathways, there are lots of things we can do out in the world. And so I started looking, what is the future of health? How can I solve all the little frustrating things that annoy me? How can we solve this problem? So I started going to conferences, but I had already done fellowships outside of the UK. A lot of my career, when I look back, led up to this moment, because I went to France for 6 months at ST7. I say I didn't CCT. I was like SD12 when I left. I'd done so much. I was past CCT and way more qualified, than a lot of, people in my training program who had actually CCT, because I kept doing stuff. I went to France for 6 months at SD7. I would go, when I wasn't satisfied with my surgical training, I would go to Germany and do courses. I'd spend all my money investing back in my career. And so I went to conferences around the world, Silicon Valley. I remember I got a boyfriend at the time and begged him to pay for me to go for this conference. I mean, literally people helped me. It's privilege, I couldn't afford it. Someone actually funded me to go to that conference. And it was like exponential medicine. What is the future of health?
Oh, Expo Medicine. When did you go?
2017. And it's the first time I had
that year.
San Diego. Digital health.
Was Tony Young there? Did he talk?
Artificial intelligence? No, he wasn't. I think it would have been the year after.
Okay. I'm sure it was 2017. Okay.
No, I would have known if
2016 or 17, because I was still at King's at that time.
I think Jack Kreinler was the only English
Yeah, Jack, yeah.
Cosima, Breton. I mean, the digital health world is so small.
Cosima, yeah.
And you recognize all the, Black people, if you know, so but anyway, so I just went to all the conferences, wide in London, Berlin, and when I was leaving the NHS, I honestly thought that I was either going to get a job with a startup, or I was going to set up my own startup. But in those moments leading up to me leaving, when I was really burnt out, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what I was going to do, and I have to say that I knew that I'd get help. I knew that I wouldn't suddenly be on the streets. I mean, I could locum for a start, I even know some point to do both.
I mean, a lot of doctors do worry that they're going to end up on the streets, literally on the, because actually that's what they're told.
That's what they're told.
So what would you say in response to that?
Remember, there's always locums, and remember, I had done my research at Harley Street Clinic, and, I knew that there were locums out there. I was a surgeon. So a friend of mine runs an aesthetic clinic. She's like, if you have 1 day a week, just train and help me, see clients. So, at the very least, I made like $2,000. I made some money because I could do stuff, but I was determined. When I left, I was slightly traumatized. And I knew that I had to do everything within my power not to locum, because I couldn't physically go into hospitals for about 2 years. It would really, I had to have a breast biopsy the year after, and I went to the boss, and I knew that I was traumatized. Like, I left the NHS when it was right for me, before I had a breakdown, because I found it so hard psychologically. But that space of time, the first 3 months, I could afford to explore. So what I did was I looked at jobs. People like docpreneurs and yourself, there were a couple of jobs I'd apply for, go to the interviews. We're looking for the clinical lead of this digital health program, but it was also nascent digital health. I then started to realize that it was either I set up my own thing, or I had some sort of a portfolio career, because a lot of the digital health companies in the UK were new. How is someone going to find a place for someone with consultant level experience? And at the time, I was also still like, do I do general? Do I do women's health? Do I do cancer? My research was in cancer. I did biomarkers, and do I do biotech? And so I decided to join an accelerator. And I think, the first thing is find your passions, learn.
That's entrepreneur first, isn't it?
Entrepreneur first. For me, I thought about interest, passion, and community. I mean, those are three things that I think guided me. Interest, it was future of health. I was interested in tech. I just got very interested in tech. And passions, what are you passionate about? I'm passionate about improving outcomes. I'm passionate about cancer, women's health. And then community. You were a doctor, you're no longer a doctor, you're this island. So find a new community, whether it's women interested in business, whether it's techies, wannabes, entrepreneurs. I had to find my place.
Yeah. Find your tribe.
Find your tribe. I love that expression. And you know what? When I look back, I never found my tribe in medicine. I was always an outsider, and I think
the interesting thing is about that, I'm sure everyone will say, I felt like I was an outsider, because I felt like I was an outsider a lot of the time. And maybe it means that people aren't bringing themselves to work. We have to all be a certain way in order to get on.
I see.
What do you think about that?
Very much two-sided. There was a part of me that was detached also. So how could I fit in? But also there's a medicine is very much, you have to play a certain part. You have to be a certain thing. And all I ever want to be in this world is free. You know, my friends always say, they're like, Steph, you're so free. You know, I just want to be free. And if you want to be free, medicine is the last career you should choose, or law, you know, careers like that that just engulf you.
Well, we're talking about the conventional career pathways within medicine.
Conventional, you're right.
Yeah.
Conventional career paths do that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, entrepreneur first, when I went in there, I thought I was going to set up a business. What happened when I went in there was I found two things. A lot of people wanting to set up health tech, digital health companies knew very little about medicine, even if they were junior doctors. I was consultant level, research, international fellowships. Do you see what I mean? So I felt like they didn't see the big picture, one. Two, you know, and again, of course, evidence, you know, when you've done research, and I look back and I think, you know, I did an MD, not a PhD, but I look back and I think there's so much that helped me there, especially going to tech. And then the other thing I found was that a lot of people would come to me as we pitched, and I toyed with a couple of ideas. The teams who were trying to build stuff, although it was quite competitive, they would come to me for advice. You know, there's a company doing very well now, and I know that I gave them some tips in the initial phase of their concept development. And what I realized at the time was that I was spending a lot of time advising people, and that's where the idea came from. It's very rare to have people like myself and Hugh Harvey, who set up Hardy & Health, the health tech consulting company I work with. It's very rare to have people like us leave at consultant level and have a certain level of expertise, plus research, plus reach, credibility. You email people and they email you back because you have credibility. I also knew that research and tech were going to be connected. So I kept an honorary senior research fellow contract at UCL, which my mentor helped me secure. And I would speak at conferences. You know, I would find my way into conferences to speak about things like the importance of research and building technology. You know, I kind of made it up as I went along. And
it's all about the title, isn't it? You think about the content later.
And then as I came out of the incubator, I'd met a lot of people. I'd also met a company that I started talking to about being their clinical director in the UK. That fell through. I then spoke on a panel at Intelligent Health and met the director of digital health for the World Health Organization. I was quite impressive on that panel because I was the clinician and I could take technology and into context and put patients in the middle and explain, you know, and a lot of people, I came off the stage and a lot of people spoke to me and he said, you know, the big AI projects of the WHO, and we need someone like you who knows about clinical, who knows about AI, who knows about research, and who can advise our teams. And as that sort of contract was coming through, and I'd sort of set myself as a sort of senior advisor and consultant for digital health, I go back to community. Whilst I joined this tech accelerator to make friends in the tech world, you know, I was no longer a doctor. I had to meet people outside of medicine. You're either a specialist in your domain, healthcare, you're a catalyst, or you're a management consultant, or you're a tech person, you're a computer scientist, you know, and within the sort of catalyst falls people who worked at Google for product or management consulting. I was clearly a domain expert, but I had to make friends in the other two streams, but also gain that expertise. And one of the beauty of research is that by the time you read 10 papers a week on AI, you know about AI.
Yeah. Just for our listeners today, and if someone put their hand up, can you please put the question in the Q&A box if you have any questions for Stephanie? We've got about 10 minutes left and we've barely even scratched the surface. So we've mentioned Hardy & Health, who knows, a health tech consultancy run by Hugh Harvey. We've talked briefly about the WHO. So tell us a bit more about the work that you're doing with WHO, because again, like it's fascinating to hear that you've got your fingers in so many really kind of meaty pies. So tell me a bit more about what you're doing with them at the moment.
So it sounds like that I've got a lot and I haven't got a lot of time, but I actually split my week up. So the way it works, I've got 2 days of Hardy & Health. The Hardy & Health, we help companies, startups go to market, whether it's NHSX or a startup in Silicon Valley or Mumbai or London or Paris. We do things like validation, regulation, health economic analysis, medical affairs, market research, all of it. WHO, I spent another sort of 2 days a week, and I got put on as a senior consultant for clinical AI, essentially setting WHO's position on how member states think about buying AI. So I wrote a 100-page framework, which is essentially around evidence generation for AI for the global health context. But I'm also the senior technical advisor in a big project that is essentially run by the Gates Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, the National Cancer Institute in the States, and they're building a large global AI to screen cervical cancer, which is a deep neural network and an application built in a software within a hardware, which is a mobile phone. And I work as the conduit. I'm essentially a senior advisor who is the conduit, who brings the business parts, the machine learning teams, the clinical and the research bits all together to run strategy and say, how are we going with validation in clinical trials? What are the pitfalls from a research point of view? How do we make sure that this AI performs as I said it would? How are we going to think about the post-implementation when this AI goes into the field? What are the things the ministries of health should be thinking about when they choose whether to buy one AI over another? So it's kind of bringing everything together. I always use the word multidisciplinary advisory, and that's what, as a senior clinician, you are when you go out into the business world. You have to be multidisciplinary. You have to layer on the tech understanding, the business, the go-to-market, and strategy in order to be this person that is really the most important translator, of the goal to everyone else. I have 1 day extra out of my week where I advise companies separately. They are mostly women's health companies because that's a passion of mine, because I did women's health before cancer research. And within Hardian Health, one of the work we do is also with investors. So I started investing in health tech companies myself. So I split my career into 3 parts. I'm an advisor who advises on women's health projects. I'm a senior consultant at Hardian Health, which will one day be the McKinsey of health tech consulting. And then I've got another day that is very portfolio-y. So I run companies, I invest.
So I wanted to say, before when we were talking earlier, you were gushing about how much you really loved your career and the arrangement that you have now. Tell us more about that. How do you feel about your day-to-day now compared to...
I've seen a question about earnings, which is great. I think that at the stage in life that I'm in now, I like having control over my time. Now, in 2 years' time, I might not be doing what I'm doing now. I might be the chief strategy officer or VP at a big, post-Series C startup. But that is the beauty of this career, is that it leaves you open to a couple of doors. And in 2 years and 5 years, I might be doing something quite different. I might be running a biotech company. In 10 years' time, I might be CEO of the most important startup in the world. I don't know. But
it's a door out of healthcare as well. I think it's quite interesting because we're still within this healthcare bubble, but as we know, there's a wider world beyond that.
You're right.
And it opens up doors to that.
I never thought about it like that. You're absolutely right. I could end up CEO of a healthcare company, and then after that leaving and doing something else. I just interviewed for my first board trustee role. I can't say what it is, but it's, I would say, the most reputable healthcare charity in the UK. And again, things like that, thinking about board positions within healthcare that then take you outside of healthcare. Does that make sense? You get a board position within healthcare, you get one, there's a private equity company that deals with healthcare, and then from that you can lead on to doing something else. I could end up in private equity. You're absolutely right.
So we've got a few minutes left. Sorry to interrupt. We've got a few minutes left, and we've got quite a few questions. For people that are writing questions in chat for the last time, please put your questions in the Q&A box. Otherwise, they may not be addressed. But before we go to questions, one of the really obvious points that we haven't touched upon is diversity in health tech and investing in general. As you know, we're both Black women and very, very rare specimens in this field. Tell me a bit more about your take on that in general. Like,
I'll start by an anecdote. I went to an invite-only health tech conference this summer. And of course, it was the first in-person conference since 2019. And I was the only Black female there. There was a Black male, which was great to see. So one extra person.
Was it like, hey?
I guess exactly. I knew who he was. I was like, hi, I know you.
Yeah. You need to know who he is. He's Black. He's a guy. Gosh.
Diversity, I'm not looking for diversity. When I go to a company's website, I'm not looking to see that you have diversity at technician level or receptionist level. I'm looking to see that you have diversity at director level, at C-suite level. And that's where I'm aiming. And I want to get there. I want to get there and then see how hard it is for people to find people with the skills and qualifications. Someone just asked about qualifications in the Q&A, and I think it's important to say, where do you look for jobs as senior medical advisor? You don't. You find yourself. You don't look for the jobs.
You network the hell out of yourself.
You put yourself in a position when someone says, I need you, so you're going to do this job. But I didn't even know I needed you until I met you, and I realized the skills that you have. And this is why I always say to medics, it's so important to have stuff behind your belt. Leave medicine something other than I'm a doctor who's fed up and I'm just going to leave. What is special about you? What have you got? I said to someone the other day, do research, do a fellowship, get something, an extra degree. And someone asked, there's another question about qualifications.
I was going to say on that point, in medicine, we're used to having a conveyor belt, which is laid out for us, and then jobs to apply for at the end. And yes, there are some jobs that tend to be advertised on Medic Footprints, Entrepreneurs, you name it, anywhere. But the reality, the best jobs, those kind of advisor jobs, they are not advertised. They usually come about by invitation or opportunity, or you just being there. You know what I mean?
Being at the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I've looked, the honest truth is that by the time those jobs are advertised in the Doctorpreneurs and Medic Footprints, I've seen them. You have to have been out in the real world for some time, because they're not looking for, very few, unless it's Babylon looking for a telemedicine job, they're not looking for a straight doctor. You have to have built some skills. So yeah, I did do extra, some qualifications in clinical AI, but mostly I learned by experience, and the experience is working with companies, and that's the qualification.
What were the clinical AI qualifications that you did?
Oh, they're like Coursera, Harvard, Stanford. You do online courses, but again, I did research.
Would they have any value to you?
Yeah, because I'm a research geek deep down. So I think I want to know. I want to know my stuff. I want to really. I'm never going to be a computer scientist, but I really want to understand a research paper in clinical AI when I read it. Somebody's asked about how my earnings compare to when
money. That's always a key question.
I'm only 3 years out, and a lot of people have to. I mean, the first year, obviously, I didn't work. I didn't intend to work. I was finding my way. I went to the accelerator. Actually, the accelerator paid. But since I've started, since January 2020, I've worked less and earned more than an NHS doctor. Remember that I was being paid consultant level. So because I was like ST12, my NHS pay was more than a few of my new consultant friends because of my hours. If you think about it, I'd done all those fellowships, ST7. I then went to do a 3-year cancer fellowship after ST7, and I've done fellowships. So you can imagine my 15 years, what my pay scale. Remember, it also adds up. The longer you're a senior reg, the more you get paid. And a lot of consultants drop in pay after if they've
well, as we know, there's a ceiling in the NHS, and that's obviously there for a reason, because
it's the ceiling.
And that's why a lot of consultants do private work on the side to complement it, right?
Yeah, and then the extra energy for the private work. But I earn more than I did in the NHS, but I also work less hours. Now, I'm hoping that continues to get better. It might not. I might take on a C-suite level job one day that means I'm working a lot, but I'm also earning a lot of money. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does that make sense? Amazing. I haven't heard from you in so long. So great to see like old like faces and names from the past. So great. Well, that takes us to the end of our half an hour golden nugget session on digital health with Stephanie. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm sure you'll have a lot of people messaging you after this one, and I have to say, because we had quite a high number of, well, we'd say it's an average number of registrants for us, but it was quite high. But I'll be in touch with you, obviously. But thank you so much for everyone that's attended today, and we've got some more coming up in the next few weeks, usually on Mondays and Thursdays. So keep posted with us. And any final thoughts, Stephanie, and advice for doctors who are looking to get into digital health?
I would say learn. I did so much self-learning. Be curious. Just know about everything. Before I got my first gig, I had spreadsheets with every digital health company and what they did and their value proposition. Wow. You know, I learned. Don't just go out there and say I'm a doctor and that's enough. It's not. It's business. Digital health is about business, you know, and the core is clinical work and you know, and science, but they can pay people to do that. So what is special about you? How are you going to contribute? You need to know your stuff outside of medicine. So be curious.
Yeah. And I would say, as Stephanie did earlier on in that journey, know thyself. As well.
God, I just wish I did earlier. I wish I did earlier.
Yeah, well, I think medical students should have the opportunity to know thyself and get coaching at a really early stage, because I think that would save a lot of heartbreak and tears and actually get them involved in what they're meant to be doing earlier on. Only healthcare can benefit as a consequence. So yeah,
use a professional support unit at the deanery.
Use a PSU or an external. We've got a lot of career coaches on our site as well, guys, who specialise in working with doctors who are diversifying, because some of the concern is that the doctors in the PSU are kind of mainly NHS doctors who think stay in the NHS, you can do this specialty or this specialty. So yeah. Anyway, we've run out of time, so I'm saying please let's do another session with Stephanie specifically. We'll see. She's a busy lady.
The last thing I want to say is I still have a coach. After the PSU, I never stopped having a coach. So guidance is important, and mentors.
Essential. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Stephanie. We're ending this now.
Pleasure.
Take care. Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye.